Seniors and those affected by Alzheimer's and dementia are targets of financial scams. How can you protect your loved ones from falling prey to bad actors? Listen to our Alls Around Town stories to learn more. Hello, Walt To End ALZ here with another installment of the Alls Around Town series of discussions. I'm here today with Laura Hickson and Carol Lewis from Dedham Savings Bank. Dedham Savings Bank is a huge supporter and sponsor of the Walk to End Alzheimer's. Today's topic will be focused on scams that are currently targeting the elderly and what can be done to minimize this threat. Carol, I know that you're part of the Walk to End Alzheimer's committee and that you have a personal story to share. Would you share it with us?
I became involved because my mother has Alzheimer's. So I'm very fortunate in that I have both of my parents. My father's 95 and my mother is 86. He's totally fine and he is her caregiver. They both live at home and we've watched her suffer from Alzheimer's and slowly decline over the years. And I became involved partly because I was concerned about medical folks who aren't necessarily as informed as they should be when it comes to caring for Alzheimer's patients. We didn't know that my mother had Alzheimer's for a long time. And at one point, her primary care physician called us and said that she no longer wanted my mother as a patient because my mother kept calling repeatedly because she didn't understand her medications. And looking back on that now, I think at the time I was upset just thinking, well, a little bit with my mother, I guess, for the repeated calling and we didn't realize what she was suffering from. But in hindsight, I think that if the doctor had a better understanding as a primary care physician, a better understanding of Alzheimer's, that perhaps the situation would have been different. So I became involved with the Alzheimer's Association last summer, and I did the walk with our bank group, and it was an amazing experience because when I reached out to friends and family through social media, I was amazed at how many folks have someone in their family or have a friend who has suffered from Alzheimer's. People really came out of the woodwork and were extremely supportive.
That is a wonderful story, Carol. Thank you. So we're here today to talk about scams targeting seniors. Why are seniors and people suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia more at risk for this type of thing?
So there are many, many reasons why elderly are vulnerable to scams out there. I think one is a sense of pride. You know, these are folks who have made it this far. Many have been very independent and some are socially isolated and they don't want to reach out to help. I will tell you that from a personal standpoint, that my father still to this day tells me, you're still my little girl, okay? And I won't tell you how old I am, but I'm not a little girl anymore. And he doesn't want to reach out to me to make decisions because he was always the decision maker. And the same would be true, I think, for any other senior citizen. Other reasons why folks our senior citizens tend to be vulnerable, well, many are on fixed incomes. So if there's a lottery or a sweepstakes and they're told they've won cash, for example, or a new Mercedes, that's a great thing. And if they're on a fixed income, who wouldn't want added income? And so they want to believe that it's true and that even if they're struggling financially, what a great win for them. Seniors, again, are reluctant to report being scammed. Like I said, there's a sense of pride, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to them to reach out to a family member, to call the police to say, I just gave $40,000 in order to get $1 million lottery windfall, and I haven't heard anything back. I think I've been scammed. There isn't a sense of embarrassment. Because so many too are lonely, they want to be trusting and they want to talk to people. So I'll give you an example. My mother, she would be at home by herself, and this is before we had caregivers, and telemarketers would call and they would talk to her and she would talk to them and they would say, you know, you have won $100,000. And she might say, well, my daughter tells me that this might be a scam. Is this a scam? How do I know this is true? And they'd say, oh, it's not a scam. And they'd start chatting with her and they'd ask her about her family life and her interests. And so she'd be in a conversation with these people, and there would be repeated conversations. They would call her back. There's that issue of being isolated and being lonely and wanting someone to talk to. So the elderly are the perfect target for scam artists.
So what types of scams are we seeing out there that we need to know about to protect our seniors and folks suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia?
There are a lot of different scams going on right now. One very prevalent one is the IRS telephone scam, where someone's calling and saying you owe money for taxes and they're going to put you in jail or take away your driver's license. Another that Carol briefly touched upon was the lottery or sweepstakes scam, where they said you won this new car or won the lottery, and all you need to do is pay the taxes or the fees for processing. Charity scams are big ones, where these fake organizations are looking for donations, and it could just be small dollars, but people are continuously donating to this fake charity. One large one that we're seeing in the community as a whole is the grandparent scam. And if you're not familiar with that one, it's where an elder gets a phone call from someone posing as their grandchild who is saying, I'm in trouble, I'm in the hospital, I'm in jail, had a car accident, and I need you to send money fast. The scammer is really trying to get the elder frantic and nervous and says, Grandma, please don't tell my mom or dad you're sending money. And so the elder isn't reaching out to confirm this information, and they're going and taking the money and sending it, whether it's a wire transfer or cash. And unfortunately, when that money's gone, it's usually gone. So a lot of scammers are getting this information from social media, so that's one area that elders really need to be careful about what they post.
It's interesting because when you tell people about the grandparent scam, they often say, wouldn't a grandparent recognize the grandchild's voice? And it doesn't really make sense. And oftentimes in these calls too, the call is a little bit muffled. The person sounds like they're far away. And the reason I know this is because my father-in-law had received one of these calls. It was early in the morning, and the person on the other end was a boy or a young man and said, I'm in trouble. I need money. Please don't tell mom and dad. I was in a car accident. And my father-in-law was savvy enough. He said to the person on the other end of the phone, you need to call your mom and dad. I can't call my mom and dad. They won't understand. Oh, I know your mom and dad will understand. You need to call them. And so they hung up, and my father-in-law got on the phone and called us. And he was very shaken up. And here's someone who is quite savvy, but he was savvy enough to call us. But many others aren't. I mean, because the scammer really as Laura said, the scammer really gets the individual worked up and frantic. This is a true emergency, and you need to help us.
Some other scams that are going on right now just due to the COVID-19 pandemic we're seeing are online shopping scams, where someone's advertising on this fake website these items that are just hard to get right now: toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning supplies. So these people are buying these items and then not receiving them. We're also seeing, the COVID test scams, where people are selling or claiming to have these tests that will tell if you have the virus or if you have the antibodies. So people are buying those at astronomical prices and receiving fake tests or no tests at all. So scams go beyond just the everyday scam, like the grandparent scam that can happen anytime, where scammers really take advantage of not only elderly, but all consumers during these pandemic and hard times. And so unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of scams related to those as well. At Dedham Savings, we really take fraud seriously, and we train all of our employees, not just frontline staff, but we train all of our employees to know the warning signs and the red flags for what to look for really for elder abuse. And we complete this training annually, and we require it for all of our employees. And, some of those red flags might be a large withdrawal or a large wire that just doesn't seem to fit with the customer's normal pattern of activity. The elder could show up at the bank with this new individual, and they might seem timid, and we're trying to teach them to just read body language a little bit and see how the elder's acting. Do they normally come in and are extremely talkative, and this time they're a lot more reserved? And then just a lot of just activity outside of the norm for the customer. If the customer is doing a change of address or requesting these services or products that they don't typically use, it might be a red flag. We also do this large cash withdrawal form. So this kind of goes for any customer, not just elders, but it's a form where we describe all these different types of scams, and we sit down with the customer and we review it with them, and then they sign it. But the whole hope is that they just stop for a moment and just think, okay, I'm answering yes to this and yes to this, so maybe I am a victim. So the hope is to just get them to talk, because sometimes, just like that grandparent scam, where they're instructed to not tell anybody and just go take out the cash. Sometimes the people at the bank are the first person this elder has spoken to. So we really just want to make it conversational and help them to sometimes realize they are the victim.
One thing too to add to that is that as a community banks tend to know their customers very well. So we see some of the same customers come in and day out. So we're very fortunate in that the folks that work in the front lines often know our customers well enough to say, hey, Mrs. Lewis, how are you today? So you're taking $40,000 out, and they're trained to ask the right questions without appearing to be prying. The front lines genuinely really care about the customers. And we've had several circumstances where our frontline folks have talked seniors out of particular transactions and have really educated them in a very respectful manner to think twice about this particular transaction. But that's the nice part about a community bank. You get some of the same customers, and you get employees that really care about the customers.
What can caregivers do to protect or educate seniors about scams?
I think it's so important that we stay connected with seniors, whether they're neighbors or family members. We should have conversations, and we should talk about, their daily activities and the phone calls maybe that they're getting. Who did you talk to today? And oh, I got a wonderful call from someone who wants me to send money for a particular charity. And we talked for a long time. You can learn all kinds of things through conversation. I think back when I was a kid and how important conversations were around the dinner table, and we'd talk about the news and what's going on in the world and so forth. And now we're adults and we have elderly parents, some with dementia. It's important to continue, though, to have those types of conversations to stay current. And part of staying current is understanding the scams that are out there.
Well, this is great information to help protect seniors and folks suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia. We'd like to say a big thank you to Dedham Savings for being a wonderful supporter of the Walk to End Alzheimer's, and also to our experts, Laura Hickson and Carol Lewis, for being with us today. Please register for the Walk to End Alzheimer's at alz.org/walk. Be well and stay safe.